Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Sharna Southan. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me Tanya Jacobi. Tanya and her husband, Ken, lost their second daughter, Ryleigh, in 2021. They live in Connecticut with their 2 living children and 3 pets. They wanted to honor Ryleigh and all of the other angel babies who left this earth way too soon. So they started a nonprofit called Ryleigh's Resources. Thank you so much, Tanya, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. I've been wanting to connect with you in person for so long after you graciously sent your Ryleigh's Resources out to me so that I could see it, and I was actually a part of it. So I've been wanting to connect with you for a while, so thank you so much. Do you want to share a little bit about the path that has led you to where you are today?
Sure. So you had mentioned in the brief intro about our daughter, Ryleigh. So Ryleigh is our second daughter who we had gotten pregnant with in, 2020, because she was born in 2021. And at the time, my daughter Kinsley was about 21 months old when Ryleigh was born. And so the pregnancy, in the beginning, we were considered slightly high risk just because Kinsley's was also considered high risk. They didn't really know if that was because it was my first pregnancy or if it was a one-off or if there was some complications. So they treated Ryleigh as high risk right in the beginning. And we were going pretty frequent for visits, but nothing out of the ordinary ever came up on the visits. So around week 23 or 24, they had told us we were just going to go back to like a normal kind of like OB routine and a normal pregnancy. And, as we kind of kept approaching full term, Kinsley had broken my water and came exactly on her due date. And we were getting closer, and they didn't talk about induction, and everything looked fine still. And so we kind of were like, all right, we'll just wait and see. And every pregnancy is different. And we had heard, kind of through other pregnancies, like usually with second or third, they sometimes come earlier. All of that stuff you hear surrounding pregnancy. So when we had gotten to 40 weeks, we were like, okay, she's still not here. And we had gone in for a routine checkup. Everything was okay. And I'm trying to remember. So it was a Saturday where it was afternoon, and we were just like in the living room, and I had said to my husband, I'm like, I don't know, like we're 40 weeks and 3 days. Like this is like so weird compared to like Kinsley's, but didn't think anything of it. Went to bed that night, and I woke up. So it was a Sunday morning. Woke up really early. It was like 2 a.m. our time here. And I just felt off. And I was like, oh, this is like really strange. And went to the bathroom, nothing. And I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go back to bed. An hour later, I still like didn't feel well. I was like, oh, something's off. And so I woke up my husband again, and I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm not having contractions, but I feel weird. I'm going to give a call to the on-call doctor. And this was around like probably 3:30 or 4 at this point. And I was like, maybe it is contractions. Like maybe this is like very just different than Kinsley's. And they were like, you know what? Why don't you just come in to the hospital? Maybe it does sound like active labor. Nothing's really started yet. So we did. We like started getting everything ready, packed up our stuff, grabbed Kinsley. We were going to drop her off at my sister's on the way down to the hospital. And in that moment, we were still like really joyful, thinking, okay, like she's probably coming today. Like this is wonderful. And we're going to have our second daughter. And it was still the pandemic, still the height of it. And we had gone to the hospital, and the protocol was still to have the mother go up to the L&D floor, and the husband or, partner or whoever was going to wait downstairs until they were checked to see if we had COVID. And so I didn't think anything of it because we had heard about this for the past year, and that's kind of what the protocol was. And I had been on L&D before. So I went up, got checked in. Ken was downstairs, like waiting in the ER before he could come up. They hooked me up to I guess, the monitor at that point, and the nurse was trying to be like nice about it, and she's like, "Oh, I can't hear a heartbeat." And I sat there, and I was like, "That's so weird." I'm 40 weeks and 4 days. I was like, how would they not be able to find that? So panic started to consume my mind at that point, and I was like, something's wrong. And she's like, but you know what, like let's like try again. I'm gonna grab an ultrasound machine too, and I'll grab the doctor, and we're gonna find it. And I was like, okay. And I just remember thinking like something's off, something's really, really off. Like there's no way. So they like rolled in the ultrasound machine. Ken was still not upstairs with me at this point, and they hooked it up. And the moment that they ran the scan over my stomach, I just saw Ryleigh, and she wasn't moving, and there was no heartbeat. And the doctor was in at that point, and the words that I know so many parents have heard is, "I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat." And in that moment, my world came crashing in so hard and so fast, and it was just so blurry. I remember calling Ken instantly and being like, "You have to get up here. They cannot find her heartbeat." And I remember him saying like, "What?" And he came up, and I still remember everything vividly, but it's still such a blur, kind of like the panic of it all, hearing that there was no heartbeat, that she had passed away, and thinking back to like 24 hours earlier where I was like, I felt her kick yesterday. Like what had happened from literally less than 24 hours ago to then get this result. And so things started to move really quickly because I was in active labor. I was contracting. And so they were like, sometimes with stillborn births, you won't have an answer right away. And so we're going to prepare you for that, but you are going to deliver her in the next few hours. And it was just, everything was so overwhelming. Hearing the words like I was going to be going into labor, delivering my daughter who had passed away, and knowing like what was going to be the next few hours and in the future. Like we thought we were going to be coming home with our second daughter, and we were going to bring home Kinsley's sibling, and calling our parents. And I remember Ken actually had taken over on that because I was just so distraught. And even to this day, I remember him saying like, it was verbatim. He's like, I don't remember exactly what I said, but just like having to call all 4 sets of our parents, because they're all divorced, and all 4 of them, and calling our siblings and letting them know, it was the worst thing that any person will and has to experience. And so that's when our world changed on April 11th of 2021. And we always say there were Ken and I were different people before that day, and then we became different people after the 11th. And so, yeah, our outlook on life has completely changed, and how we view the world, and what we want to kind of give back to other people who have gone through it too.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Like, so many times I just felt goosebumps all over my body because even though I didn't get to like that far along in my pregnancy, I still know that internal, like like you said, you knew something was wrong, but it's like you don't want to have that person on the outside of you to confirm that. But when they do, like, there's just so much that happens. Like, I remember feeling like numbness, but also like I'm like, no, 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 this can't be my reality. Like, so many conflicting emotions come to you in those moments, and you're just like, no, 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 like, nah, this is not happening. And I when they told me there was no heartbeat, I remember the room was, it just went like, it was almost like it was void of all sound. Like, it went silent. And I felt like the whole world just shrunk and
Mhm.
was like crushing me. And I'm like, no. Um, but when you mentioned that, it took me back to essentially my pregnancy after loss, where I was really afraid of buying the car seat, buying the cot, buying all of the things because I was afraid I wasn't going to bring her home. And when you were mentioning, being, you're not having to come home with anything, you don't get to bring your baby home. I, c- that was a huge fear of mine. And so how were you able to obviously navigate that time? Because that was obviously, yeah, like I said, a huge thing that I was so afraid um going home and having to face that reality of, you had every intention obviously of bringing this beautiful baby home, and then having that reminder at home that that's not been your reality.
Yeah. No, I think you put it really well. And when you had said that the room became silent, because that is a perfect way to explain the moment that you hear that I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. It does become silent, even though there's like so many voices like going through your head, and like you have nurses and doctors and like a team there. And, if it's your spouse, your partner, whoever it might be, it's just, it was such a surreal moment to like know that your world has changed instantly. Like, it was within seconds. Like, we went from being, 40 weeks and 4 days pregnant to being like, okay, yeah, we're gonna bring Ryleigh home, to then being like, no, sorry, she passed away. It's just so mind-boggling to have that happen. And so, yeah, like, coming home, like, that was really terrible in the sense of, we were still on L&D. Luckily, we were, I think, the last room. So we never heard any other pregnancies, thank goodness. We never heard any other like babies crying. But I remember being wheeled out, which was such a different experience than Kinsley. Like, I was wheeled out with Kinsley, whatever, 22 months before that, with our baby, heading downstairs to be put into her car seat. This time was so awful, being wheeled down that same hallway, carrying our bags and a small little box of mementos that we had of Ryleigh, and that was it. And then being placed back into the car, having an empty car. It was just, yeah, I have goosebumps thinking about it, because then driving home and having to try to tell like our 22-month-old that I'm I'm not pregnant anymore and that her sister isn't here. That was so hard to navigate. And at the same time grieve too, because we had to be present still for her. We had to take care of our toddler, and we still had to like get up every single day and kind of move forward, and also realize this was our new life and we didn't have Ryleigh here. And I think you put in a good point too about pregnancy after loss. Like when we got pregnant with Chase after Ryleigh, I was petrified. I was so scared. Um, Thinking about, well, we just made it the entire way. I just went literally full term and I couldn't bring her home. So for me, when we got pregnant with him, every single moment, every waking hour, like was spent like, am I bringing him home? Like, am I going to be able to take him? Like, or is this going to be swept underneath my feet again? Like, is this just going to be like the rugs being pulled out from underneath me? And am I going to kind of come crashing down? And yeah, it was hard. It was hard to purchase anything. It was hard to talk about a potential due date. It just, none of that felt real. And until he was in my arms at home, that's when I felt comfortable, like out of the hospital. Like I wanted to be out of the hospital, home with him here, to feel like things were going to be okay.
It's yeah, it's so different, and it's different, but that feeling of like not it only being okay with when you've got them at home. I remember like I lost, so my baby died at 7 weeks. Like I didn't get to 40 weeks. So if, I thought in my mind I would get past certain milestones and that would be okay. I wasn't. In any case, I was not okay. I just had to keep processing like everything that kept coming up every time I felt something weird, every time I had a fear or anxiety or anything come in, I had to process it. And that went the whole time. But I guess, and for me, I I cried the whole week leading into my delivery because I was induced. Because I have epilepsy, they didn't want me to be, they wanted me to be in a controlled environment. So I had a due date. I had a date that I was booked in. So I literally was freaking scared like the whole week leading up to that. Cause then I was like, am I going to get to 40 weeks and then they're going to tell me there's no heartbeat? And that, so my fear of what happened to my first pregnancy just had morphed into a different timeline. And I was at the hospital and I was so scared. And I remember thinking, it'll be when I get her home, when she's delivered and she's safe. And when I'm at home with her, that's when it will change. I mean, it does. You do get that sense of reassurance, but there's still so many other things that come with parenting after loss that just you think I'll be okay, but it just adds a whole new element to it.
Yeah, you hit that like nail on the head for sure. I have chills thinking about it, because I think people who haven't experienced a pregnancy or infant loss just think that it's just associated with the loss of that baby. And what a lot of those people don't understand, which is understandable because they aren't in our shoes, they haven't experienced it. I would never want anybody to ever go through what our loss community has experienced. But the reality of it is, to your point, is you fear so much more. Like I was never an anxious person. And I don't think even in that first year I was as anxious. I think I was numb. Like Ken and I talk about it a lot. I think I was just so numb and kind of going through the motions of it all, and getting through, quote unquote, getting through the first year, that really in year two is when the the loss even hit me harder, which I was more anxious. I stressed about Ken going down the street with Kinsley, like driving in a car and being like, oh my God, what if they get into a car accident? Or thinking the worst possible thing, which is it's so messed up because I hate that my brain goes that way because I'm like, it's going to be okay. For the majority of that stuff, that is going to be okay. But that's just like where my mind goes. And it still to this day goes,
My
like when
mind
the
still
kids
goes there.
like when the kids get sick, it's so tough. Like it's a normal cold or a normal virus. And my brain goes to like, okay, well, what if something happens? Like, do I have to rush them to the hospital? Like, where would I go? And it's just your mind's on overdrive constantly. Because in the moment that you lose your child, you lose all control. So I think there's a part of you like after loss that like you know you can't control everything, but there you want to control some stuff. And like to say like, oh no, like don't go do that because you could get hurt or no, like so that fear is still there. And I always say to Ken is we became a statistic. So even though like if the doctors are like, oh, it was a whatever percentage, I'm like, that to me doesn't comfort me anymore because yeah, we're such a small percentage and it happened to us. So like everything else that I'm thinking of, it's a small percentage too, but there are people that become you are placed in those buckets like when those things happen. So yeah, parenting after loss takes on such it's such a beast. And it's an everyday thing. Like it's constantly like, and things that you wouldn't think come up, and you're like, okay, like how do I battle this one? Like, how am I going to get through this today? So, it's always changing.
Yeah. And that's what I often say, like life after loss. So regardless of how early or late the loss was, that whole it like you said before, that there's a definite before and after. You're not the same person anymore, nor should you be. I think a lot of people try to hold on to that old version of themselves, and it causes them more anguish and more stress than what it should, because you need to let yourself, you know, evolve into that next level, even though it's an experience that you never would want to ever go through. It's happened and now it's part of you. And we need to sort of allow that to become a part of us. And it does change you. But yeah, like you said, there's definitely so many, so many areas of your life that that loss ripples out into. And when you said about uh, the car accident, there's so many times my daughter is 6 now, so my pregnancy loss was in 2017. And um, I still worry about her getting into the car with her dad. Like they'll leave from me or my nan or her nan or someone that's not me. And then I'm like, oh, but now and she went in to have she had to have dental surgery. So I had to take her up. They had to put her completely under GA to do the surgery. And I, the whole probably week leading up to that, I was talking to my husband. I'm like, I am like shit scared of her going in to get this surgery. I knew she needed to get it done. There was no way she couldn't sit in a dental chair. But I was afraid they were going to put her under GA and she wouldn't wake up. And that consumed me for that whole like week, probably leading up into it and on that day. And I'm sure they're super sensitive little beings. I know she picked up on that, on my anxiety and my stress, as much as I was trying to process that for myself, because I knew that was my fear and not anything to do with her. But they took me in, they allowed me to watch her get put under, but still walking out of the room and just leaving her there with them like that, it ripped me up. Like I was like in tears, and I was like, I feel like I have to justify this to people. Like I feel like I have to explain why I'm so upset. And I think that's where, you said before, it's not just the loss. Like there are so many different parts of us and that get affected, and you don't even think that that's going to happen. Like I wasn't prepared to have a meltdown when my daughter was going in for dental surgery. I'm like, to most other parents, it's just, she's going to the dentist, she's getting some fillings and but no, I was the
No,
complete mess.
no, I totally understand that. And you bring up a good point in the sense of everyday normal things like that, like a dental surgery, for most parents wouldn't even like blink. They'd be like, okay, sure. But when you've gone through a loss, that stuff, like you just start to think about everything that possibly could go wrong. And I think it goes back to like, you can't control that stuff, but you want to control it. So it's just your brain trying to think of everything and do everything that's going to like protect and save them and make sure that they're okay. Because I know that's how I feel about Kinsley and Chase and definitely my husband. It's everyday things that I'm just like, okay, it's going to be okay. And surgeries are definitely like, I had a surgery in November and had my thyroid removed, and you hit that too. Like the week before, I was such a nervous wreck for myself, like thinking of the worst possible thing. Like, what if I don't wake up? Like the kids aren't going to have a mom. And that was so tough for me to realize like I had to do this surgery. There was no other way around it because I had to be healthy for the kids and for Ken and for myself. But that week it was so awful. And I just remember even that morning, and you're right, because I do think they can pick up on so much that my daughter, for the first time, who's so strong, like she's been so strong ever since we've lost Ryleigh. I think she, having a sibling loss at such a young age and to be told that at like 2 years old and to kind of grow up with it, she's dealt with a lot. And so she could sense my fear, and I could see her that morning being like, are you going to be okay? And, telling her like, yes, I'm going to be okay. And then in the back of my mind, like thinking like, okay, hopefully I'm going to be okay, and that was really tough for me too. And all I kept saying is just like, I want to just come out of this surgery. Okay. I just like want to come out. I just want to be like here for them and here for Ken. And it's tough. So yeah, everyday normal things change. It's just, you have a whole different outlook on life.
One in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how? Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a lost mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives. Yeah, I totally feel you with the surgery thing because September last year I had to have breast surgery. They found a lump, so um had multiple tests and they didn't know what it was, so I had to have it removed. And the whole yeah the whole time leading up to it, I was like, I I'm not done here. I'm not My life isn't done. I'm not finished doing what I feel like I'm meant to be doing. I can't leave. I can't leave her. I can't leave my husband. I can't, and as much as I think experiencing rock bottom can give you this immense appreciation for life, it also does, show you that it's very very fragile, so that things can be taken away from you very quickly. Um, but on the flip side of that, we should appreciate like every single moment that we have here. Um, because in any given moment, we know, and it just sucks that we know that things can change in, like you said before, like a split second, in a couple of words that someone says to you, your whole life has just, flipped on its head. But yeah, it sucks that our brain goes there though. Like you needed to have the surgery. I needed to have the surgery for my health and my mental health as well. Um, so that, you can be the healthiest version of yourself, but then your mind just runs away. And that's why it's really powerful to have, and I think with going through these, big life challenges too, we can choose to have the tools to support us, because then in any given moment in our life after loss, we are going to be triggered and challenged in other ways that you don't ever see coming. But the tools that we can use that, well, maybe we have used, which is what I did, navigating my loss, I was then able to, use again, like over and over, in being in these other challenges, in these other big emotions, being able to support myself through that so that they're not so consuming. Um, Even though they are very consuming, you can still, it doesn't have to knock you off your feet. It doesn't have to, keep you down and out. You can allow them to be there. You can allow them to present themselves, because they're very valid fears, very valid emotions. Um, but we can let them go through and not stay with us. Um, so I want to, because I know you have created something incredibly beautiful out of your experience, and it takes a really special soul to be able to do that, to use your experience, for the betterment of others. And just, so do you want to share like what Ryleigh's resources is, and how people can benefit from that?
Sure. So Riley's Resources was created about, I would say, 7 months after we lost Ryleigh. So in the hospital when we lost her, when we were sitting in the hospital room, because I had to be in there to be monitored overnight, even though I really just wanted to go home at that point. I was just like, I don't want to be here. We had talked to a bunch of nurses and our doctors and team, and um, I just remember turning to Kenna at one point and saying, I don't know where we go from here, but I do know in some way, in some form or some capacity, I want to be able to honor Ryleigh. And I don't know what that looks like right now. Like, my mind was so clouded and fogged and that wasn't the time to start thinking about anything, but I knew, I think deep down in my soul, there was something. I just didn't know what. And so September of 21, me, Ken, and Kinsley, again, it was still the pandemic, but I had said to him, I was like, we have to go away. Like, we have to get out of Connecticut. Like, we have to get away from everything here. And I don't care. I don't care like where that is. And Ken like searched and he was like, you know what? There's a really nice, resort or whatever in Costa Rica. Let's go to Costa Rica. And so I said, okay. Didn't think anything of it. We booked it, took Kinsley, and that week was just such a nice getaway for the three of us, just us three, to reflect on everything, to talk about Ryleigh, to give Ken and me the opportunity to really just hone in, I think, on everything and not have the kind of chirping of everything back here at home. And we were thinking, like, what was from our experience, like, what could we do to help other lost parents? And there was two parts to it. And I have to give Ken a lot of credit for kind of coming up with the first part of it, which was the resources. What we found really hard for us when we got home was you are given some information, but not everything. And so we found ourselves taking care of Kinsley through the day and kind of navigating our grief. But then at nighttime, we were just like sitting and Googling or on our computers, like searching support groups and podcasts or books, and it was just like page after page and just trying to navigate all this while trying to also grieve was really difficult and really hard. And so Ken had said, what if there was like a one kind of stop shop for all these resources, something that you could just go to a website and it was categorized where it was books and podcasts or parent meetups or virtual meetups or whatever it might be, because everybody grieves differently. And we knew that. Ken and I were grieving very differently. I stayed on social media. Ken that day literally was like, I'm not going on. We had a lot of friends and family pregnant and going on to have their second and third kids. And that was hard. That was like hard to see that. And again, not that you would want anybody to experience what you've just gone through, but to see everyone else kind of like keep going on with their lives when you felt like your life was so halted was tough. So he had thought about the resources part. And then I had thought about when we left the hospital, I had learned from just other support groups or other moms that I had talked about, like things that they were given in the hospital. And I was like, oh, wow, like our hospital didn't have that, or we weren't given the opportunity to do a handprint and footprint mold, or I didn't realize I could take a lock of her hair, or like things like that. Like, and it to no one's fault. Like, we always look back at it and we're like, that's a top down thing. That's something that should be from the top of the hospital where everybody is trained on bereavement, especially for pregnancy and infant loss. Like, these are the things. And of course, like if the parents want to have it, there's the options. And if they don't want to have it, then they don't have to. But to not to have that and to look back, I'm like, yeah, I really would have loved X, Y, and Z. So that's where we had come up with the comfort boxes. So with Ryleigh's Resources, we have created a website and it's ryleighsresources.org, and you can go on. And we're always constantly like adding new resources, or if we get new book links, or if somebody comes out with a new nonprofit, we're always adding it because it's always going to be something that's going to be evolving and changing. And so we want it to be as up to date as possible. And then the second part is the comfort boxes. So we provide these boxes, especially to the hospitals, so parents have the option to have these mementos to go home with, because you're only given a certain amount of hours or days with your child, and you have to kind of cram it all in really, really fast and to be able to have those memories for all those years to come. And then we also do it across the country, and we do it internationally, and it's free of charge. So we fundraise to provide these boxes for parents.
That's so beautiful. There's so much that, yeah, the medical system, it depends. That I have heard, some people having good experiences in them, but I would say the majority of the experiences aren't necessarily the greatest, whether from the people or from the resources. And I definitely know there was nothing for me in leaving the hospital. So to be able to have a place where you can go, even for, you know, late, I don't late term losses, but also early losses. There's so many different little things that you can do or ask for that you're not ever told about. Um, so I think it's a beautiful thing that you've been able to create out of what you experienced and then what you've heard other, lost families experience as well. And to have this one-stop shop, like it's just amazing. And definitely needed. So thank you for creating it.
Yeah, no, Ken and I look back at it from like where we started it, and we really wanted to do something to honor Ryleigh. But also in retrospect, to honor all of the babies and children who've left this earth way too soon, and to support the parents, because it is such a lonely feeling. And to your point, Ken and I always refer to, if somebody says like, oh, our loss wasn't as like late as yours, we are always the first to say, no, no, no. A loss is a loss. It doesn't matter if it's a 6 week loss, if it's a 40 week, a 41 week, a 23 week, like we have all lost a child. And so to be able to have those resources there for anybody at any given point, like Ken and I still will go on our own website and research and look up books or look up podcasts, or if we get introduced to a new lost mom or a new lost dad, or even a parent, a grandparent, whoever, we are always directing them or saying like, oh, we have this resource, and so we're pulling it up. So it's helpful for us too, because it's right there. It's something quick that we can send that over to somebody instead of Googling for hours on end and saying like, is this the right match? Because we've done the research, because we've put in the time to say this is a category or this is what we could provide for them. So that it's been, I think, helpful in our grief journey too, to be able to give back to other parents so they don't feel alone, that they don't feel like no one gets it, that no one understands, and that they're just like in this little bubble. Because there were so many times, especially in that first year, that Ken and I felt like that, because none of our friends or family had really experienced that. And so it was tough. It was tough for anybody to put themselves directly in our shoes. And we were just navigating this new life. And so we never wanted anyone to ever feel like they were alone.
Yeah, it is such an isolating experience. And sometimes it's not until you start opening up about your story that other people then start opening up about theirs. But I didn't know anyone that was going through or had been through loss. No one in my family had that I was aware of until obviously my experience. And I realized my auntie had and my grandma had actually had 5 losses. But with that age group though, they weren't allowed to talk about it. They had to, push it all inside and, get back up and keep going. So it's a very different mentality. Like, I want to talk about it. I want to feel like I can process it. And for me, that is being able to talk about it and being able to find other people that, have gone through it. But it's a very isolating experience because no one wants to talk about it.
No, I feel like even just like a couple of years ago, it's come such a long way where people are
Mm.
more receptive of like talking about it and sharing their baby or their child, which is so great to hear all of these voices, kind of backing up your story too. And because I think that was really tough for me at first because I was like, what do I do? Like we had lost Ryleigh and I hadn't gone back on social media for that week. But everybody knew I was 40 weeks. I was literally about to give birth to her. So I remember turning to Ken and saying, for me, I'm gonna share. I have nothing to hide at this point, and it was good for me to share our story, to share Ryleigh, to kind of share what we were going through, what I was feeling at any given point, because I knew there were other people out there, even though if they weren't sharing their story or they weren't, that I didn't, again, it goes back to feeling alone. I didn't want them to feel alone because I remember feeling so alone in that 1 week of like, do I share? Do I not share? Like, how is this going to be perceived? And I just remember saying, like, it's going to help me. This is like my way to kind of start this grieving process and this journey. And I think it also helped other people who haven't experienced something like that truly understand what I was feeling, to say, like, I want you to say her name. It's not going to change anything. Like, I'm constantly thinking about her. I want you to say her name. I want her to be remembered. I do not want her to be forgotten just because she's not here. Um, and I think that was helpful because then people were able to approach me and talk about it or talk about it with Ken. So even though he wasn't talking about it on social media, for him, joining dad support groups or talking to other lost dads was helpful for him. So yeah, I felt like for us at that time it was just the right thing to do, and I'm so glad that I did, and I kind of stuck through it, because it also helped me with Kinsley. Like it was one of those things of bringing the parenting after loss to her, because it was, okay, do I share this with a 22-month-old, or how do I share this with a 22-month-old, and how does that all like work out in the future? And I know I touched on it a little bit before, but it has made Kinsley, I feel like, such a empathetic little girl. Like she cares so much about other individuals and their feelings. And her brother, I think having Chase here, they're siblings. They definitely argue. Like there's no doubt about it. But you can see at the end of the day, like the care and love that she has for him, because she knows how special it is. She knows that Ryleigh isn't here and she's able to talk about that. And so I am glad I also kind of introduced that right from the beginning. And again, as much as you can with a 22-month-old, and then every year you just kind of like add more on top of it. Where like she's 5 years old now, and we are having harder and deeper conversations, and ones where I have to like take a second and be like, okay, how do I how do I say this, or how am I wording this to a 5-year-old? But it's definitely helped, I think, her through the grieving process as well.
It's definitely important, I think, for the children to see emotion, because a lot of the time, for us as adults in our childhood, we maybe didn't get the opportunity to be able to express ourselves because maybe our parents didn't know how to handle it. Um, so I think definitely having age appropriate conversations, and it's not easy either. Like you're like, how do I? It's no rule book. You're like, how do I tell my child about, what's been happening? But so that they can make the connection between how you're energetically presenting and the emotion. So they can sense there's a disconnect. If you're emotional and you say, oh no, I'm fine, they're like, but I can feel something's off. Like, so you want them to know it's okay to have that emotion, to be able to just go, you know what, this is why mummy's upset right now, and it's okay. It's okay to be upset if something, XYZ, however the it's presented. But I think being able to show them about that authenticity, even for my daughter as well. Like, she doesn't know. I have spoken to her about, there was a baby before her, but she doesn't quite grasp that, because she was born after our loss. But just to know that it's okay to have the freedom to feel your emotions. If they have them arise, then it's okay. And give them the tools as from such a young age to start to process what they're feeling, because they don't know what it is. It's just this big thing. But she's gonna, Kinsley will grow up and have this such a deep understanding that probably most kids won't have. Um, because of her experience and because of what she's been through. But it can also be such a powerful thing. It doesn't have to be to her detriment that she's been through it. It can be a really beautiful, powerful thing that she's been able to, have unfortunately, she doesn't have a sibling that she can tangibly play with. Um, but she's got someone that's looking over her, and it's given her then this depth of understanding and, like you said, empathy and compassion that most kids probably won't have.
Yeah, I can definitely see it like over the years how it's evolved to where it
Mm.
is now. And um yeah, I mean you bring up a good point too about, so I always wonder how Chase is going to kind of adapt to it, because he was our child after Ryleigh. So he hears us talk about Ryleigh, and I have no doubt in my mind that Kinsley will kind of bring him up to speed with everything as the years go on, because I know she will. But it'll be interesting, I feel like, to see how Kinsley has dealt with it, because she was before, Ryleigh, and then Chase is now after Ryleigh. So it's going to be such two different perspectives on it. And yeah, and for Chase, we never called him our rainbow baby. For our family, it just like didn't fit. And again, I totally respect the term and the after it, but for Chase, I just felt like he was our wanted child just after Ryleigh. Like, we wanted to be able to give Kinsley a living sibling. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see where it takes him, and involve him, because Kinsley's so involved with what we do with Ryleigh's resources now, like helping us put the comfort boxes together or dropping them off at the hospital, or on nights that I'm lighting a candle for a baby in heaven, she'll ask me the baby's name and then she'll blow out the candle with me. So that has been, I think, special for me, because then she's also like honoring all these other babies and children in heaven. And she'll say it. She's like, "Oh, are they like with Ryleigh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I hope so. Like, I hope that they're all together." And she's like, "Okay." And she's just got a really big heart with it. So I do hope that kind of keeps carrying on, where she'll just continue, like hopefully continue Ryleigh's legacy when long after, Ken I are not here, and with Chase too, and kind of do their own thing to maybe bring it to light, because unfortunately it's just something that's going to continue to be there, which I wish it wasn't. But we unfortunately hear stories all the time, and new losses. So
Yeah, it's yeah, something that I wish was never, I wish there was a way that we could reduce the numbers, but it's just something that is going to continue to happen. It has happened long before us, and it's going to keep happening, unfortunately. And sometimes, like you said at the beginning, there may not be answers. Like sometimes there are things that the medical system can do, and they can, find answers and do things to help women, like so that it doesn't happen again. But a lot of the time that's not the case, and it will continue to happen. Um, but if we can have these support systems in place to catch the women when they fall, like this is what's going to be so important for their healing, for society to change, so that more you can talk about, there's more safe places that you can talk about your experience. And then maybe one day the medical system will change. Like you said, it's a top down that has to come. There has to be someone in there that can, maybe over the years, start making these changes. But yeah, having these support systems in place is going to be so vital, because, like you said, it's unfortunately going to keep happening. And, I particularly want, and I'm sure you do too, your children to grow up in an era where they know their support. They know that they can talk about what's happening. And the kids have the tools to be able to talk to other people about it as well, even if it's not their experience, which I hope she doesn't have to go through that. But if then there's anyone in her network when she's grown up that goes through it, then she can have the conversations and keep carrying that through. So I know what you're doing with your two littles is going to change the future, because having the conversations with your kids now is going to change the future. And like you said, Chase will have he'll have a different relationship with Ryleigh. He'll have
Yeah.
one, Kinsley was there in the middle of it all. She's going to have a different relationship, and Chase will have a different relationship, but it'll be there and it'll be special to each of them.
Yeah, it will. It'll be, especially as they become adults. I always say that to kind of hear their perspective on it all, because they are so young now, and like you said, there's only so much of the conversation you can have, and age appropriate conversations like with it. And with Chase only being 2, I think back, I'm like, okay, that was Kinsley. That was Kinsley's age when she lost Ryleigh. So I just remember the development where it is now, 3 years later. So it will be interesting to kind of like see how he takes it all. And yeah, and I fought so hard for him, like fought day in and day out to like get him here safely earthside. So I do think I have special connections with all 3 of my children. They're all very different. And again, equally loved, but it's all kind of the way that my life has turned out, that each of those connections with them are different. And I feel connected to all 3 of them for those reasons.
Yeah, so beautiful. And they're all just I mean, everyone's children. If there's more than
Yeah.
one, you always have different connections. But when you have them in that way, like with your experiences, yeah, definitely they're different. The connections are different. And um, I've only had one after loss, and my connection with her is so different to anything that I ever anticipated my motherhood journey to be. So, and my child to be. So um but I would love for you to share where people can find you, read about what you do, and yeah, join in on your journey.
Yeah. So the website is ryleighsresources.org. And the way that we spell Ryleigh is RYLEIGH and then S, and then it will be resources.org. And that's where you can go on. You'll find ways to look up our story. So we have shared our story and how we lost Ryleigh. You'll find resources categorized. You will find ways to donate, because that is, again, all the comfort boxes are fully funded. We don't ask for a dime from any lost parents or the hospitals. So we continue to fundraise every single year to provide these boxes. So there's a donate link there. And then we can also be found on Instagram. And it's just Ryleigh's Resources, spelled the same way. And with there too, with that platform, we will share different things that are kind of going on all around the world, like what people are doing for support groups, what people in your area, and if there is a lost parent, or even, like I said, a grandparent or family member that is looking for a specific resource, to like email us, which is just Ryleigh's Resources at gmail.com. And we are more than happy to like look up things and send your way. And at any given point, doesn't have to be a recent loss. This can be if you're 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out, and you're looking for something. Ken and I want to make it easy and accessible for people. So those are definitely the ways to get in touch with us. We are always available, like always, through email, through the website, through Instagram, and just happy to connect with everyone, because we want to be able to help and support.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
Not that I can think of, but I just appreciate you allowing me to come on and share our story and to share Ryleigh with everyone, and just to be able to support the lost community. Because I know we say it a lot within the community that it's a group you don't want to be a part of, but the members that you find and connect with are truly special. And so I think that's the big thing that we've gained out of it too, is just these connections in just the 3 years that we've lost Ryleigh. And I know that we'll continue to make these connections for years to come, and just to be able to support everyone going through it.
Thank you so much. It is definitely, I have, even through the podcast, I have loved being able to connect with all of like everyone and hearing their different stories, and for you today, being able to connect with you all the way from Connecticut to Australia. So the yeah, it's definitely each person, each woman that I speak to holds a special place in my heart, and I love being able to have these conversations. Um, you know, it sucks that we're here and we're having these conversations, but like you said, they're the most special people, and I've really enjoyed, and I can say that I enjoy talking to you all, because it's you all have such beautiful hearts, and the experiences are all so different, but you've also been able to create something from that which other lost families are going to be able to benefit from for years to come. So I truly appreciate you, Tanya. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.